I felt a sting on my back as I woke up with a jolt. Looking up, I realized that my teacher had hit my shoulder blade with a ruler in order to wake me up. Wearing a scowl on his face, he watched my eyes as he silently put some papers on my desk. The class groaned as Mr. Walter handed out our assignment for today and returned to his desk. We had a test this week, and we had received a 6-page packet for review. I estimated it would take me at least 2 hours, maybe 3 to complete. Looking up from my desk and back up at the board, I noticed that our teacher had returned to the front of the room and was playing a video on the screen. The video, which was a review of our lesson from 3 days ago, had been pulled up on YouTube. At the Camingston High School in Indiana, you could say Mr. Walter was a bit of an enigma. Being the only calculus teacher at my school, everyone who has ever graduated in the last 13 years surely would have remembered taking his class. Not because he was a good teacher, nor because he was a horrible one. He remained a mystery because he never spoke. Not once. Not only did he never speak, nobody ever saw him leave the school. And as our school provided no food for the teachers, except for the cafeteria at lunchtime, which was only for students, the teachers were expected to bring their own food from outside, which meant that Mr. Walter never had food or water. Many kids just wrote him off as weird or simply a freak. But I knew that either they were wrong about his habits, or I had a great misunderstanding of the things the human body needed to survive. Which is why after finishing my homework at 11 p.m. that night, I decided to return to school. On the outside of the building, I looked in through Mr. Walter's classroom windows. There was nobody inside. The coast was clear. I knew the windows were unlocked at my school in case of emergency, so I slowly, carefully, was able to open the window from outside and slip right through into the room. Once inside, I immediately set out to do my task. I creeped over to Mr. Walter's large desk and opened the top left drawer. My eyes were met with a stack of test papers. Closing that drawer, I opened the one to its right and saw a stack of calculus homework papers. The next drawer contained yet more calculus papers. I was beginning to get disheartened, but then I realized that the next drawer was locked. I pulled on it with all my might, but the lock was pretty sturdy. After grabbing a paper clip from Mr. Walter's desk, I unfolded it and attempted to pick the lock. The lock wouldn't budge. I kept trying. Come on, come on. As if to meet my request, I heard a click, and the drawer flung open. My jaw immediately dropped. The top paper in the cabinet had a pentagram drawn on it. Under it were several Latin words in red ink. I hastily looked through all of the papers in the drawer. There were dozens of them, all with various demonic symbols and Latin words under it. I dropped the papers, slammed the cabinet shut, and sprinted out to the hallway. Beads of sweat ran down my face and neck. My heart was pounding as I turned the next corner. I froze. Mr. Walter was walking down the hallway, away from me. When he heard me step into the hall, he stopped where he was standing. What are you? He didn't respond. But I slowly began to feel the world stop moving. It was like time itself slowed down to a halt, where before I could hear cars driving on the road outside and crickets chirping. It was like they were slowing down and then stopping. After what felt like hours of me staring at the back of my teacher's head from about 10 paces away, I noticed I couldn't move, even though I willed my muscles with every fiber of my being to run away from the danger. I knew that my body was being held in place by a force beyond this plane of reality. Suddenly, all of the lights went out. Everything was pitch black, and not even the moonlight shining through the glass door at the end of the long hallway was enough for me to see. As quickly as it came, the darkness was gone and was replaced by a dark red light, like you would see in a photography room. Unlike a photography room, however, the light wasn't coming from anywhere. It seemed to just permeate the hallway without emanating from any specific place. And then I noticed Mr. Walker. He was in the same position, not farther nor closer to me than he was before the lights went out. The only difference was, now he was facing me. If I could have moved my lips, I would have screamed for help. His eyes had no irises. All I could see were the pupils, which were like tiny pinpoints in the center of his eye. And the rest was white. His mouth was drawn up at the corners in a vicious smile. It would have looked normal, except that, other than his teeth, his mouth was like a large black void. Mr. Walter then began to shriek, without moving his mouth. The sound was a cross between a baby crying and an eagle screeching. It was like nails on a chalkboard, and as if the noise was a demand for all others to bow down to him. All the lockers began opening and closing rapidly. Inside of the lockers, all that was visible was a black void. Still screeching, Mr. Walter rose several inches off the ground. There were no strings attached to him. There was no hidden lever. No, he was hovering up off the ground, defying gravity in doing so. Mr. Walters shot across the hallway like a bullet, aimed at me. I instinctually tried to cover my face, but it was like I was floating in syrup. I couldn't move my muscles. When he hit me, all went black. The sharp rap of a ruler on my shoulder blade woke me up. My head jerked upwards, and my heart was still pounding. Everyone was staring at me. On the board, the YouTube calculus lesson was still playing. I must have been dreaming. It's not real. It's not real. Calm down. my heart gradually began to slow down. I took it as a lesson that my brain wanted to give me, or something, and that it wasn't possible for anything to be wrong with our teacher, that it would defy reality if you never ate or slept, and that I was just paranoid. When the class finally ended, I had decided not to watch so many horror movies, but I could walk out the door and enjoy the weekend. However, I felt Mr. Walters' hand on my shoulder. He kept me until everyone else had left the classroom. What he said to me, the only thing I've ever heard him say, still keeps me up at night. You keep falling asleep in my class, Tim. If it continues to happen, there may be more serious consequences. I doubt it'll come to that. Also, I hope you've learned your lesson. If you try to solve questions, you might find answers.